Most people never question where money comes from. But in 1910, 7 men locked themselves in a secret meeting that birthed America's most powerful institution. What they created turned every dollar into an invisible promise, and every paycheck into a silent contract. If you think you know what money is, you're about to find out you've been lied to. Most people have no idea that the Federal Reserve was planned in total secrecy. In November 1910, a private railroad car called the Aldrich Special slipped out of Hoboken, New Jersey, under cover of darkness. On board were 7 of the wealthiest men in the world, men who controlled roughly 1/4 of the Earth's wealth at the time. Names you rarely hear in school: Senator Nelson Aldrich, Henry Davison of J.P. Morgan, Frank Vanderlip of National City Bank, and Paul Warburg of Kuhnloeb and Company. They didn't want the public to connect their names to this scheme, so each man used an alias. Even the porters and staff were kept in the dark. No last names, no company affiliations. This was bigger than any law or election. This was the night America's financial sovereignty was quietly signed away. And if you're still here, you're exactly the kind of person who questions what they're told. The location was the luxurious Jekyll Island Club, then the most exclusive hunting retreat in America. Owned by some of the same industrialists funding the plan, the club was the perfect place to hide. Over 9 days, the group drafted a proposal to create a central bank with unprecedented powers. They called it the National Reserve Association, a name they believed would sound harmless to the public. According to G. Edward Griffin, Paul Warburg later admitted their biggest fear was that Congress would discover this was a plan to cartelize the banking industry under the banner of stability. In his own memoirs, Frank Vanderlip confessed, if it were to be exposed publicly that our particular group had gotten together and written a banking bill, that bill would have no chance whatever of passage by Congress. And the detail I'm about to share will make you question every dollar in your wallet. The men designed the bank to appear public but be run by private interests. Their ultimate goal: control the issuance of currency, set reserve requirements, and ensure that no competitor could challenge their collective dominance. This wasn't just economic strategy, it was an act of political theater. When the Federal Reserve Act passed in 1913, almost no one realized the blueprint was born in secret, without democratic debate. If you leave now, you'll always wonder what else they buried in those 9 days. By the time they returned to New York, they held a draft that would transform the U.S. economy. Within 3 years, the Federal Reserve became law. And within 6 decades, the last ties to gold were cut, leaving nothing but fiat promises. And the wildest part of this story is still ahead. Picture it, December 23rd, 1913. While most Americans prepared for Christmas, Congress quietly passed the Federal Reserve Act. Few lawmakers had even read the final bill. The Aldrich Plan, conceived in secrecy at Jekyll Island, had been tweaked just enough to look different, but the core remained. Private banking power cloaked in government authority. Most people think the Federal Reserve is part of the government. It isn't. It's a privately owned banking consortium with 12 regional banks, each largely controlled by commercial banks in their districts. These banks can issue currency, set interest rates, and buy government debt with money created from nothing. G. Edward Griffin calls it the cartel's ultimate tool. A structure so complex it looked democratic but functioned like an exclusive club. The president appoints the board of governors, but those governors answer to the private banks that own the Fed's shares. When you see Federal Reserve note on your dollar, remember, it's a promissory IOU created by this hybrid machine. In the early years, the Fed's power grew quietly. It started by setting discount rates and reserve requirements, rules that told banks how much cash to keep on hand. But over time, it expanded its influence by buying U.S. Treasury bonds, which injected new money into the economy. This is called open market operations, and it's how the Fed manipulates inflation and purchasing power. And the detail I'm about to share changes everything. By 1929, the Fed's policies had helped inflate the stock market bubble that ended in the Great Depression. When that crash came, the same bankers who designed the system survived by absorbing smaller banks and consolidating power. It was a wealth transfer hidden behind the language of recovery. Most Americans never realized the Federal Reserve was built to serve the strongest players first. And the most shocking twist is still ahead. Most people don't realize America's money was once anchored to real gold. For decades, every dollar in circulation could, in theory, be redeemed for a set weight of precious metal. That promise kept politicians and bankers honest, because printing more dollars meant securing more gold reserves. After World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement established the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Other nations pegged their money to the dollar, while America promised to redeem dollars for gold at $35 an ounce. This arrangement fueled post-war prosperity but contained a hidden flaw. America kept printing more dollars to fund military adventures and social programs, without increasing gold in the vault. By the 1960s, foreign governments began demanding gold in exchange for their swelling stacks of dollars. France, under a Charles de Gaulle, famously sent warships to New York Harbor to collect bullion. It was a silent run on America's gold reserves. Between 1958 and 1971, U.S. gold holdings fell from over 20,000 metric tons to barely 8,000. In August 1971, President Nixon faced a choice: watch America's gold reserves vanish, or break the promise. On national television, he announced the suspension of dollar convertibility into gold. Overnight, the dollar became a fiat currency backed only by confidence and eventually coercion. Without the gold anchor, there were no limits to how much money the Federal Reserve could create. Inflation exploded in the 1970s, wiping out savings and fueling double-digit interest rates. The dollar lost over 70% of its purchasing power in a single decade. For the first time, Americans saw the true cost of trusting paper promises, and the wildest part is still ahead. People act like fiat currency is modern and sophisticated, but history is littered with nations that tried printing value out of nothing and ended up in chaos. If you've ever wondered whether it can happen here, these stories should erase any doubt. In the early 1920s, Germany's Weimar Republic faced massive reparations after World War I. Their leaders believed they could pay off debt by running the printing presses. At first it worked. Workers got paid, creditors received currency, and the illusion of prosperity spread like wildfire. But by 1923, a loaf of bread cost over 200 billion marks. Middle-class savings were obliterated in months. People burned cash for warmth because it was cheaper than firewood. Don't forget, this wasn't ancient history. It was less than a century ago in one of Europe's most advanced economies. And if you're still with me, you're proving you care enough to see what others ignore. Fast forward to Zimbabwe in the 2000s. When Robert Mugabe's government began seizing farmland and printing money to cover deficits, inflation accelerated beyond comprehension. At its peak, prices doubled every 24 hours. The Reserve Bank issued $100 trillion notes, so worthless, people used them as notepads and toilet paper. The result was total economic collapse. If you think hyperinflation is impossible in developed countries, ask the citizens of Venezuela. Over just a few years, the Bolivar became a running joke. Ordinary families watched their life savings vanish while politicians insisted everything was under control. The lesson is always the same. Paper promises only last until trust evaporates, and the next fact is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about your own currency. In The Creature from Jekyll Island, Griffin warns that the US dollar is not immune to the same fate. When debt piles up and deficits explode, every fiat system eventually faces a reckoning. It's not a question of if, only when confidence finally snaps. Keep watching, because what comes next exposes why your dollars were designed to decay from the start. Most people never stop to ask what a dollar actually is. They assume it's backed by something: gold, silver, oil, land. But the truth is, almost nothing backs it except your belief. And the more you look, the stranger it gets. Today, less than 3% of US dollars exist in physical form. The rest are digits, entries in bank ledgers, flickering across servers you'll never see. In 1971, when Nixon severed the gold link, money became a story we all agreed to pretend was true. This was the moment fiat currency fully took over, and it changed everything. In Griffin's Creature from Jekyll Island, he explains how this new system allowed banks to multiply every deposit through fractional reserve lending. If you deposit $1,000, the bank can loan out roughly $9,000 more, conjuring credit from thin air. That means the money supply is almost entirely an illusion, a confidence game dressed up in official language. But there's more. Every time you swipe a credit card, take out a mortgage, or sign for a car loan, you're participating in this system. Debt becomes new money. New money drives up prices. And when prices rise, the purchasing power of every dollar you saved quietly shrinks. Consider this. From 1913 to today, the dollar has lost over 97% of its purchasing power. A dollar in 1913 could buy what now requires more than $26. That's not by accident. It's the inevitable result of a system that must keep inflating to survive. If the money supply ever stopped growing, the debt pyramid would collapse in weeks. Keep listening, because in the next few minutes, you'll see why the final phase of this system may already be unfolding right now. This is the part no one ever mentions on the evening news. While most people are distracted by politics and celebrity gossip, the final evolution of fiat money is quietly taking shape, and it could transform your freedom to spend, save, or even speak. Central Bank Digital Currencies, CBDCs, are being tested around the world. China's digital yuan has already reached over 200 million users. Europe's digital euro pilot program is underway, with plans to expand by 2026. In America, the Federal Reserve has published discussion papers and quietly funded research into a U.S. digital dollar. If you think this is just a modernization of banking, think again. CBDCs aren't like Bitcoin or cash. They are programmable. That means whoever controls the ledger can decide how, when, and where you spend your money. And if you're still here, you're proving you have the curiosity most people never develop. Picture this. Your paycheck arrives as digital credits. But if your carbon footprint is too high or your social score drops, certain transactions could be blocked. If you try to buy more than your ration of gasoline, your funds could be frozen automatically. This isn't science fiction, it's a system that already exists in pilot form in multiple countries. In The Creature from Jekyll Island, Griffin warns that the same forces who engineered the Federal Reserve have always aimed for complete monetary control. He wrote, "If fiat money is the vehicle, then digital currency is the engine designed to take us all the way to a cashless society." Consider this. Cash transactions are untraceable. They preserve privacy and autonomy. But with CBDCs, every dollar becomes a data point, recorded, tracked, and potentially weaponized. Between 2020 and 2024 alone, over 114 countries began researching or piloting their own digital currencies. The Bank for International Settlements calls this the most important transformation of money in generations. But they rarely mention what it could cost you, the last shred of financial independence. And the most chilling part? All of this was set in motion over a century ago, when 7 men on a hidden island decided your money would never be yours again. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of legend who refuses to stay asleep. Subscribe, because next time, I'm exposing a scandal that nearly brought down the entire global monetary system overnight.